when it comes to the entrepreneurship journey, I feel like we need to listen to ourselves and trust ourselves a lot more than all the outside sources. And this is really going to lead into our conversation. Get the knowledge, get the information, get all the training that you need. But at the end of the day, that we already have a lot of what we need inside of us. And the reason that you started your business, the reason that you started, what it is that you're doing is because you have something unique to offer. Bring that into your business, trust yourself, and bring that into your content.
So if you had started out your business and the current business that you're running now doesn't really look anything like the previous business that you started, and you're wondering like maybe right now you're navigating a few twists and turns, you're gonna like this guest story. Her name is Jodie. She's a marketing agency owner. She's a marketing educator, podcaster, and international luxury retreat host. Emphasis on international. We love international, and I love retreats.
I love luxury.
You love luxury. This is a perfect guest.
It's a good match.
She specializes in helping coaches and educators refine their messaging, play to their strengths, and create marketing strategies that feel good and most importantly, work effectively. Jodie found her sweet spot helping coaches and educators get visible and create content that not only builds their brands, but also gets results and reaches the right people. Her mission is to help creative entrepreneurs, coaches, and educators master content creation, develop strong brand identities, and build businesses they love.
That's important.
That's important, right,
Yes,
Jamie?
it is.
I think so. I got Jamie back. It's been a while, I feel like.
Yeah, I've been kind of in and out with trips and kids and life.
Kids and trips and life. Jodie, thank you for being on this episode. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here, and I can totally relate to the trips and kids conversation. So.
Oh yeah? How?
So excited to be here.
Cool. Well, thanks for this bit of time. In the next episode, dear listener, just so you know what's going on, Jodie has agreed to share with us the trends that she's seeing on Instagram. For example, right now in 2025, is repurposing your long form podcast or YouTube content into Instagram really working that well? Or is creating content natively for Instagram working better? And if you feel like you're a slave to the algorithm, she has some hacks about how to get away from that. So you're going to want to watch the next episode. Jodie, let's start out with a very simple question. What does your business look like right now, before we go back in time to the highlights of building your business and those more challenging character building moments where the business built you?
And don't we all have lots of those? So, as my business looks right now, I have a content marketing agency. So we help educators and coaches and personal brands kind of build their brand through social, with a kind of unorthodox creative approach. And then I also, like you mentioned, host retreats. So we host retreats in Europe predominantly. We've hosted in Spain. Our third Italy retreat is coming up in 2025. And so that's kind of what we do on that side. And then I also work with in the kind of consulting and mentorship space as well to help creatives and, like I said, coaches, educators build their own kind of content strategy and their brand.
Sounds good. What kind of offers then do you have specifically? Are you doing like group coaching, membership? Like what does it look like?
So I have the done for you side, which is Align Creative Co. And we have three main offers. So one is the monthly content retainer. One is we have a really exciting content quarterly, almost VIP week, where we'll take all of your content backlog and all of your brilliant ideas. We pull them out of your brain and we create a quarter's worth of content for you. And then we also have a really fun session called a storyboard session. So essentially that is where we do all the strategy and then hand it over to you to execute. So that is on the done for you side. And then retreats are another offer. And then I do also have one-on-one hybrid group coaching program called Sought After Educator.
Okay.
Nice.
Which one of those makes up like the most revenue in your business? Or actually, could you just rank all those like from highest to lowest as far as percentage of revenue they make up?
Yeah, so I would say agency is definitely number one now. And this has very much changed over the past few years. So, a little bit of background is I started out working specifically with hairstylists. And then, as so often happens, the demand and the backside of kind of what I was getting asked to do. And I had a lot of my peers approaching me for help with doing what I was doing, which was launching programs that served hairstylists to grow their Instagram and to attract clients. And so, as my peers started approaching me, more of that done for you work and building my team started to take over. And so, as it stands now, as I have just launched the consulting sought after educator program, I would say agency, retreats, and then education. 2 years ago, it was education, agency, then retreats. So it has kind of changed a little bit.
Education agency retreat 2 years ago to what it's changed to now. When did you make the shift from hairstylist? No, you weren't hairstylist. Were you ever just a hairstylist?
Yeah, I was a hairstylist. So in 2020, that's when I shut down my mom was a salon owner. And then I went to hair school. I was done by the time I turned 18. So I was in the hair industry for 15 years. And so this kind of funny how I got into what I'm doing now.
No.
Doing the
It,
math over here.
I was actually at a class for hairstylists in 2020. So this was, I want to say, beginning of March 2020. I was at a class for other hairstylists. I was invited by another educator I knew. And at the end of this class, long story short, someone had asked a question about Instagram. And they were like, there was almost this like visceral reaction from every hairstylist in the room where they were just so frustrated. They were so annoyed that they had to like utilize this platform and they weren't getting results. They didn't know exactly like how to utilize the platform to grow their businesses. And so as the educator is saying like I don't really teach that, I was sitting there thinking I don't relate to this at all. Like this is something that I've thrived using. Like I've really grown my business. I went independent within 18 months. I was able to really grow my clientele and create a lot of demand for my services. So 2 weeks later, when the world shut down, I know you have your own story with that. um, I kind of made the decision really quickly that, I'd really wanted to get into education for a long time. I had worked on the sales side of the hair industry. So I'd thought about this on multiple occasions. And I just decided like, this is, the time. There's a message for me here with this timing. It felt like almost divine timing going to that class and then everything that happened. And so I actually handed in my notice, not like to terminate my lease at the place that I was renting a chair at. And I decided to go full on into education and marketing. And that was kind of how I got started.
Nice.
Wow.
Given the timing, I hope they were going to let you out of your lease or do something anyway. That was crazy time.
It was a crazy time, and we did have to like there was the expectation to keep paying without being able to work. And so, that was a little bit of a consideration, but also it was more so this is the time. And also realizing, after 2 weeks out of that environment, I felt a lot better. And I'd already been really enjoying the marketing more than the service providing for a long time. And so it felt like an opportunity to kind of make that shift.
Okay. All right. You're speaking so positively about a time when everything was up in the air and but maybe everyone, we had very little sense of direction. Like, where did you derive that sense of peace, calm, and direction from?
It's interesting because when I look back at it, I do have, I mean, obviously aside from all of it was a hard time. It was a really stressful time. I personally had been going through a really dark time before that. And so for me, it felt like a turning point. Like I'll give just like a little bit of background. Like my husband and I had gone through a secondary infertility journey. And so I was dealing with a lot of like depression. I was dealing with a lot of, just really, I would say lack of purpose. Like when you are so committed to the thing that I wanted, which was to grow our family, right? And then we weren't able to, the sense of like the loss of control and like the just darkness that I felt at that time. I think that really when everything in the world like fell apart a little bit, I was almost it was a weird time, but I was almost able to find my purpose a little bit, find purpose in something new, find purpose in, and in a lot of ways that really lifted me out of what I had been going through. Um, I'd also been kind of going through more of like a personal development journey and like really learning how to cope with all of the things that were out of my control. And so yeah, I think that that's where for me, I was already going through such a difficult time that it just kind of felt like, okay, like what's next? And it almost like, taking away that sense of almost artificial security, I think is what happened for a lot of us, right? It was like we felt like, okay, there's all this security. And then when that was no longer there, it almost freed me mentally to think about what do I actually want? What will make me happy? What will be the thing that I can make my impact in? And so, yeah, that's kind of, I think, what helped me get through that time.
So then had you said you had already been doing your Instagram, or you felt like that was something that you already were thriving at? So had you already kind of had like this online thing going, or like how did you start, like, oh, I'm just going to create this agency online, or like how did that kind of happen?
Yeah, so the agency is something that came a little bit later. That kind of grew organically. But at the very beginning, what happened was I started creating content for other hairstylists. And I was like, this is where I was kind of like, this is how you can keep serving your clients, like even when you're not able to be at the salon. This is how you can, because I had that success growing my clientele. I was able to fill cancellations with an Instagram story, like a lot of things that looking back, I'm like, wow, like, but at the time it was just kind of what I was doing to grow my business. I had gotten really obsessed back in like 2015, 2016, when I came back from maternity leave. I went back to a salon that had zero walk-in traffic. It was very different from when I got into the industry at 17 years old. Like the digital age transformed the beauty industry. And so, so
I'm
the
counting you.
haircut I started listening to things like Amy Porterfield's podcast, Jenna Kutcher's podcast, Being Boss, like all of those, beginning digital marketing podcasts, and started applying that to the hair industry because there were no hairstylist specific marketing podcasts at the time. And so that was kind of, 4 years before this all happened, that was kind of my intro. And once you start listening in the entrepreneurial space, I'm sure some of your listeners can relate to this. Like it starts to plant that like what's possible, like that seed, right? And so that was kind of already one of the things that was happening. I also had kind of become the go-to person for a lot of my peers, like stylists, to ask about, okay, how are you doing this? How are you getting clients? Like, and I had less than 1,000 followers, like during when I built up 90% of my clientele. So it's not like I had gotten into that influencer stage or anything, even. It was just learning how to market my business. And so then, when I made that transition, I started with, I'm very much someone, before I launch something, I want evidence. Like I want to be able to troubleshoot it, make sure that it wasn't like a fluke, quote unquote. I wanted to make sure these things were repeatable and that other people would also get results. And so I started doing one-on-one mentorship, which was like very, very low cost. It was like, I think I was charging like $40 an hour or something to
Oh,
Oh,
like
whoa.
at the very
Okay.
beginning. Didn't last long, but that was kind of like
like
I wanted
hopefully
to
someone
test
advised
it.
you to change
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I wanted to test it, right? And this was like, I didn't know anything about the online space. Like, this was brand new. I was just doing what I could do to like get through this crazy time. And then I also started getting approached by like some brands and some, educators and stuff like that to manage their social media. So because I was in that like grassroots phase, I was like, I just want to make money online. I just want to make it so that I don't have to, go back, and so that I can really make something of this. And that's the truth about how it started. Very quickly, I signed up for masterminds. I took a lot of copywriting courses, which is still something that I kind of bring into my content creation today. And organically, like after I launched my first program, which did really well, for me, like I was able to get, I think like 8 people registered into this group coaching program from Instagram stories. Again, I had like 1,500 followers at the time. Um, and so that was kind of just where it started. And then, my next launch was even better. And then the launch after that was my first 5-figure launch. And, doing 20K in just a few, like, it felt like, it's obviously a lot more work, but in a week I was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. And
It's
so,
huge.
yeah,
Yeah.
it felt huge. And so that was kind of where and again, in this process, my peers started being like, how are you doing this? How is this structure happening? Because in the beauty industry, like there's a lot of educators, but it's not like a lot of the online business space, right? So that was kind of where the agency started. Is I just started getting asked, and then that got busy, so that I needed to bring on support to help me fulfill, and that's just kind of how it started going.
Wow. So
Cool.
I have a question,
Yeah.
as since we are Facebook and Instagram ads managers.
Haha.
My question is, in any of this time, did you ever use ads, or was it all just organic growth?
So predominantly organic. And I did a lot of like collaborations and things like that. So that was, I kind of built it and borrowed it predominantly. I did play around with some like webinar ads though. So, and like challenge ads and things like that, but very, very low cost. Like I think the most I ever spent was like $1,000 on a launch. Yeah. So predominantly organic.
Before I ask my next question, do you want to share a little bit about this 2025 social pulse that you are very kindly offering to our audience?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So I, with my work, when I first started supporting other people, Instagram Reels weren't even a thing. So let's give that a little context, because I think that we forget how much, Instagram as a platform and social media as a platform has changed over the past 5 years. And so I have put together a training, and essentially what it's going to do is it's going to help you take what was working for you. Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to the fact that what was working in 2023, it's a lot harder to get traction now, right? A lot harder. And so I'm going to talk in this training about ways that you can update your messaging to create more relevance now, as well as ways that you can kind of measure those results differently, and ways that you can create a content strategy that's going to give you the visibility, it's going to give you the trust building and that nurture with your community, and then also that's going to lead to conversions. Because I think that so often as entrepreneurs, we get really stuck in that visibility phase, which is vital. It's very, very important. However, there's more to it and there's more pieces. And that's why I say we help people build their brand through content, because there's a lot of fringe benefits that people don't think about. And like, for example, for our clients, things like, creating a course based off the feedback they were getting on specific types of content, that they were able to have like a 5-figure launch on the first one just with a wait list, because they were listening to their audience. So creating content that, like in a manner to get that feedback. Also, ways that we can leverage tools like ManyChat to not just have the conversation end at social media, right? Ideally, that's where it begins. And then, we want to really think about social media as a whole, as a part of our marketing, not as this separate entity, which I think a lot of us do tend to think of it as. So, and then also, we're going to talk a little bit more about how you can optimize your repurposed content, because I've seen a lot of ways that it's not working. And we'll talk about that in the next episode too. But yeah, that's really what it's about. So this training is typically $47. You can buy it on my website, or you can go to aligncreativeco.com/art. And just for your listeners, I'm offering it for free. So they can check that out.
Yay! Thank
Woohoo!
you very
Thank
much.
you.
Aligncreativeco.com/art. When you were building your agency, was there ever a point, coming out of the pandemic now, looking 4 or 5 years back, was there ever a point where you were like, is this working? Maybe I should go back to doing hair?
Oh, I'm sure there was multiple points, like none that lasted more than 24 hours, but but yeah, I think that because it just I feel like my purpose is so strong with this for multiple reasons. But there were definitely quite a few moments that were really felt sticky, because at the beginning, I think revenue is always a big, and not just revenue, but profit is always like a big, it's not, it's not as cushy, right, as it is later on. And so I remember a specific time where but it's funny because all of those have led to like growth moments for me. I'm not sure if you can relate to that, but I think like all of the things that were really tricky for me, looking back, I was like, oh, thank goodness that happened. At the time, though, it feels like the sky is falling.
Right.
Give us an example. Give us an
Yeah,
example. I want to hear
let's
this.
dig into this a
Yeah.
little.
So I found this mastermind that I wanted to join, right? And it was this launching mastermind, because I really went all in. I was like, I'm going to treat this like a university re-education. I'm going to invest in this. So I had like kind of looked at the numbers, and it was a big investment for me at the time. It was like, I think $1,200 dollars a month. It was a year commitment.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
okay.
Yeah.
so
Significant.
that was a big chunk, especially kind of in those beginning phases. But I was like, I looked at it and I was like, okay, my clients, like, and I was like, I can make this work. It'll be a little, it'll cut into my take home a little bit, but I can make it work. And so again, I very much believe in the power of investing. And so I took the leap. I hyped myself up for it because I needed to. That was more than double what I'd ever spent on my business before in year two. Um, and the next day, I looked at my Stripe account, and I noticed that a payment had bounced from one of my clients. And I was like, okay, this client was probably the most difficult person I've ever worked with, also. And like, it was very much like not a good relationship. It had become not a good relationship. It was very much like scope creep, like all of the things. But I was counting on this, and I did have a 30-day cancellation policy. And so, I sent an email. This taught me a lot about what to, deal with as well. So I sent an email, and I got one back from their assistant saying, yeah, we're actually not going to be moving forward. Like, this person's, going in a different direction, or they decided to do it. There was some really weird thing, like a couple like red flags leading up to this point, but basically they were just not going to honor the 30-day notice, and they were just not going to be paying anymore, despite the fact that like a lot of the work for that next month was already done. And that was within, I want to say, 48 hours of signing up for that mastermind. And their monthly like bill essentially was the exact same. So I was like, not only am I signing up for this mastermind, now I have lost this exact amount in revenue. And that was a moment where I was like, it really, really, like, lots of tears, lots of like, oh my goodness, lots of a little bit of like, mad, like anger at myself for ignoring so many red flags was like the predominant feeling that I had. Um, and so that was an example of like a what am I going to do moment. Um, because, again, it's like back in that beginning phase where, it's not as cushy. That kind of thing makes a huge difference. However, looking back, it freeing up from that particular client, had that not happened, I likely would not have been able to execute at the same level that I was able to inside of that mastermind. And that is what led to that first $20,000 launch. And so the lesson for me was like, okay, your capacity is massive. And so having that mental drain of that person that was so difficult to work with and took advantage, and having that energy of like, oh, I need this person. I think had that not happened, it would have held me back from what ultimately was able to take place.
Right.
Okay.
We've all had those clients, right? Where I won't say any names right now, but
You better not.
no.
Luckily, that is
But
the
no,
last
it's
person.
Say it again.
Sorry?
Say it again.
Oh,
I didn't hear
luckily, that is the last client like that I have had since then, because I learned that it's not just about, people who are willing to pay you. It's about people who are aligned with you and that you can get great results from. And so I have not made a decision like that since, which, we all need those lessons, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't need your money that bad for my piece.
Yeah. And it's
We'll find somebody else.
and it's exactly what you said. People who are aligned with you
Yes.
that you can get good results for, because like we could get results for a wider range of people than that are aligned with us. And when there's not alignment, especially from certain types of special clients, the lovelier ones, then it's you might still get results, but it just I've been there. It's like
Mhm.
you're thinking about their account all day long and wondering if
Mhm.
an email's coming in and what's going to
Mm.
be next. And it's like, but now, yeah, the scope creep. Wow.
Yeah.
So that alone could be its own episode, like scope creep and how not to do that and why
Right.
you shouldn't even go there. Um,
For me, it was that inner people pleaser too, like, which is something that's been one of my biggest like challenges, like outside of it is like, I very much learned through entrepreneurship that I really cared what people think about me, and I want everyone to think that I'm nice. And that's actually been the biggest internal battle that I've had to overcome, is you can be a good person and still stand up for yourself and have boundaries.
Mhm. You seem nice to me.
you do seem like a really nice person. While we're
Okay.
talking about boundaries,
Oh, go ahead.
is there any way we can get on that retreat for free? Like,
I love the shooting the shot.
right,
Right.
right,
Might as well.
right.
Okay, but speaking of retreats, on these international luxury retreats, like, how did you start that or decide, like, I'm just
Oh
gonna start
yeah,
doing these retreats? Because that is also super appealing for me. I'm like, that's cool.
we're
I
looking at
want to
your
go.
Instagram stories now.
We
So
love travel and stuff, obviously. So,
So the retreats that kind of came about in a couple, it's like, I feel like there's always, when I think about how things came about, it's like the moment that it happened, but then there's always the groundwork. So, um, the moment that it happened was I've been wanting to go to Italy since I was like 12 probably. Like I have always just always felt like I wanted to go there. So it's been on a dream trip list. So when I started my business in 2022, I think is when so I started my business in 2020. In 2022, I finally was able to like take my family on a trip to Italy. And so I was so excited. And we went for 2 weeks. And towards the end of the trip, this was also the first time I'd taken time off. So I had a team that I was able to completely take that 2 weeks off, aside from a little bit of check-in. So I was with my family, had this amazing trip. My husband and my son, one day when we were in Sirmione in the north, they had gone out to go fishing and find like a fishing store to try and go fishing at the lake. And I was sitting on the balcony and I was like reading The Big Leap. I remember the book I was reading, and I was drinking a cappuccino and I started like, journaling. And I just wrote down this idea. I was like, what do I want things to look like next year? And I was like, I want to bring people here because I had gotten so much clarity from that trip and getting out of my day to day and being able to like, take some time away from the business, that I was just thinking about how I needed to bring my peers here. I needed to bring other people here to get out of their day to day so that they could kind of get this clarity and this, this fresh mindset that I had experienced on this trip. And so this kind of led up to this also because I had been talking to several of my peers looking at the retreats that were available. And the predominant thing, there was kind of one of two issues with a lot of them because I was looking for a retreat to attend. One, it was so much information in such a short space of time, like almost like that they were coming home and they were inspired, but then they weren't really doing anything with it because it was kind of like information overload. Um, or two, it was more of just kind of like a wellness retreat. Both of these things have their place. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with either of those approaches. But I kind of had a vision for something different where I wanted to go deep instead of wide. And I wanted to really get a transformative kind of element to the retreat. So I went to my friend's house talking about the trip after, and she's a photographer. She had been my brand photographer for years. And as I was leaving, I kind of just like word vomited, like, I have this idea. I think we should host retreats. Like, I think we should partner on this. And she's like, what? And I was like, okay, I have to go because I have to pick up Mason from school. But we got on the phone while I was driving home and we kind of mapped out this idea. And I was like, okay, give me 24 hours. I'm going to float this to a few people. I'm going to see if we can get some deposits and then let's do this. So I sent out 5 DMs to my existing clients, and I think within 48 hours, I had 2 pay in fulls and 2 retreats and 2 deposits for this retreat. And so yeah, so it was just creating what was needed. And I just kind of looked at it and I was like, this is what people need. This is what people want. It was very much aligned with what I taught anyway, what I did with my existing clients, just taking it to the next level and going deeper. So that's how they were born. And then our second one, once we launched it publicly, that sold out. This one in 2025 has sold out. So it really, I think, just came from a place of creating something that people wanted.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Do you do one a year? 2 a year?
We did 2. So we did one in 2023, 2 in 2024, 1 this year because I have been in a little bit of a rebuild. And then we are hoping to go back to 2 in 2026. So stay tuned because they'll be coming soon.
2 retreats a year. That's almost like a full-time business
That's a
in
lot.
and of
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I do have a business partner, which is amazing because we're able to, like, I don't think I could do it 100% myself if it was the 2, but yeah, I do have an incredible business partner who we're very much have opposing strengths, and so that's been able to work really beautifully.
That's
I like
good.
that.
That's good.
A wise man
Like
once.
opposing thumbs, but better.
Yeah. Oh wow. This is a new inside joke, I guess. We just watched this cute movie called Harold and the Purple Crayon. Have you seen that?
No,
Yeah.
I haven't.
It's cute.
It's
We liked
definitely
it.
we
Yeah.
liked it. I would say
Okay,
it's worth
I'll check it out.
a watch. Is it on Netflix? No.
Probably. Well, in the States, it's supposed to be. I
Ah,
think for
that's
us,
right.
it wasn't working. At
Yeah,
Netflix here.
because we're in Mexico and so our Netflix is different and we had to get it on Apple. But it was a cute movie and there's this porcupine who all of a sudden became a human and got opposing thumbs, and I won't spoil it for you.
Cute. Okay, I'll check that out.
What's one thing you would like to leave the listener with?
Yeah, so I would just leave your listeners with just, I think when it comes to the entrepreneurship journey, I feel like we need to listen to ourselves and trust ourselves a lot more than all the outside sources. And this is really going to lead into our conversation. Get the knowledge, get the information, get all the training that you need. But at the end of the day, that we already have a lot of what we need inside of us. And the reason that you started your business, the reason that you started, what it is that you're doing is because you have something unique to offer. Bring that into your business, trust yourself, and bring that into your content.